So many people overcomplicate the process of high notes, vowel modifications, laryngeal tilt, formants, so many confusing terms. And, whilst this can actually be helpful for some people, I find that for most of us here, for all of us who are starting off, this can actually be quite daunting and frankly, quite counterintuitive. And so what if we could break it down in a way that it makes it so simple? What if I could explain how to hit high notes in a way that's so simple there's no way you cannot get it? Make sure to stay right to the end because I've got an exercise that's going to help you find this easy high notes. Let's get it. Now, real quick, for those of you who don't know me and you're here on this show for the very, very first time, my name is Ivan. I'm a voice teacher who's worked with students from all around the world over Zoom and over through some of my self-study programs as well. And really on this show, I'm here to make learning how to sing as simple and as easy as possible. Share some of the things that I picked up along the way so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. And so if this is something that is up your lane, make sure to hit that subscribe and bell notification from wherever you are joining me. We release episodes every single Thursday or Friday, depending on where you are joining us from. And also, if you want to get some more help, if you want to get something more tailored for your voice or more structured, check out some of the links in the description. I've got ways to work with me over my self-study programs or to work with me privately. Links are all down in the description. Okay, so as promised, we're here to talk about high notes. We're here to demystify learning how to sing high notes because it doesn't frankly sometimes feel so elusive. So let's break it down. The first thing that I found really, really helpful is let's understand what actually happens when we sing a high note. What exactly happens in terms of our body, the anatomy, what actually is happening. Wait for it. Our vocal folds need to stretch. And this is where, at the beginning I was saying there's vowel modifications, there's, learning how to sing with the right formants, learning how to, get the laryngeal tilt, all of these things, right? But if we drill it down to what we're trying to achieve fundamentally, it is, can I get my chords to stretch? Because similar to a rubber band, when you kind of stretch them and then you flick it on it, the pitch changes, right? It's kind of similar to what happens when we're singing with our voice. When we're singing down low, the chords are kind of thicker, they're more fat. And then as you go up higher, they kind of stretch and they thin out. And as they vibrate, they then create a higher pitch. And that's actually all there is to creating a higher pitch. Now, for those of you who are a bit more geeky, who really, really want to understand it, or who aren't afraid of gore, there is a pretty explicit video of the larynx of a cow. So basically the voice box of a cow. And they show you this process of the chords stretching. And I know for some people, it can be very, very useful to visualize. So go check it out if you want. But largely speaking, all we want to do when we want to sing high notes is get the chords to stretch. Now, the second piece of the puzzle, though, is their chords need to stay together. They need to also resist a certain amount of air pressure, because if I didn't have that and I just got the chord to stretch, usually you get more of like a falsetto sound, which is, one way to hit the high notes. But I think for some of you here, you want to get those bigger, stronger, fuller high notes. So the second part of the equation is, we got to get the chords to stretch, but then they also need to maintain connection. They need to stay together. They need to be resisting airflow quite efficiently. And when we have these two pieces of the puzzle together, you start to have some really awesome high notes. Okay, so you're probably wondering, what does all of this even mean, Ivan? You've told me that the chord stretches like a rubber band. You've told me that they stay connected, but how does this actually help me get to my high notes? How this is relevant is it then means, our training can be very, very simple. Our training, if we're trying to hit high notes, can be very simple. All we need to do is we need to design an exercise that gets the chords to stretch without interruption, without tension, and allow them to stay together at the same time. If we can just share a little exercise that can get that to happen for you, you're going to start experiencing high notes the way they are meant to feel. And so this is where I'm going to stand on the shoulders of giants. This is not an exercise that I came up with. And in fact, when I first started learning how to sing and I was working through these singing programs, these singing CDs, I used to dismiss them. I was like, screw these sounds. I'm not getting anywhere with this. This is not the sound that I wanted to make. But little did I know what it was actually doing and how to actually do them. And now that I understand it in retrospect, I'm hoping that you all don't make the same mistake as I do. So let me share with you an example here, and then I'll explain what's actually happening, how to do this exercise, and then also some cues that I personally focus on, some sensations that I personally notice, and some of the sensations that my students, my clients, that they notice as well. And so the exercise goes a bit like this. So a very unexciting exercise, but hang with me here. Let me explain what this is doing, and I'll also explain how this really gets you to sing some of those high notes in a song as well. So bear with me here. What's actually happening here is these are called edge exercises, and I think this is what a lot of the singing success guys would used to call edge exercises. And basically all we're trying to do here, we're navigating up and down our range, and we're finding these little taps or these little connections of the chords. Notice how on each note, I'm finding this. I'm just getting the chords to connect again and again and again and again. But by nature, because I'm going up and down my range, the chords are also stretching at the same time. So remember how I said at the beginning, right? For us to hit high notes, all we need to do, get the chords to stretch, and then we want them to stay together. This is a great exercise to start getting you to feel that. So let's talk about what are some things you can be thinking about or focusing on when you are doing these exercises. Because I remember when I first started doing these edge exercises, I was not sure if I was even doing them right. I didn't even know what the heck I was aiming for. So let's go a bit deeper and share what are some of the things you might be thinking about or some of the things you might want to notice. So the first thing that's really, really important is we're looking to find that same connection at all times, which means if I was to find this on the bottom note, at no point do I go louder or I change it, which means maybe I might go, kind of go breathy. I'm just trying to maintain this, this clean attack on the note every single time. Now, it's not a very intense sound, so it shouldn't really be fatiguing your voice. If anything, the quieter you can do, the better. And I've also found that, especially from working with clients, when I go up to the higher part of my range, all I'm trying to do here is sometimes I feel it as a bit of a squeak. I'm kind of just squeaking to my higher note. Notice how squeaky it is on those higher notes? Sometimes I find that that is so useful because for me, that's a bit of feedback that, hey, my chords are coming together and they're doing the work without any of those kind of weird tensions kicking in. It honestly feels so relaxed. Now, for some of you who are, really kind of muscling it up, or you're kind of going, you're kind of really forcing things up, what can be helpful here is let it go to your falsetto, which means let it go to your falsetto initially, which is fine, but then see if you can keep maintaining that same connection. Because really the difference here is if I go, the chords are stretching, but they've started to come apart. But if I can go, just see if you can find that same connection even up high, even if it initially feels like it's just falsetto for you. You find that eventually over time, you can get this kind of squeakier, more connected sound. And this is the real foundation of singing high notes because from there, we can lean against it. We can make it fuller. We can make it stronger. Because some of you might be thinking, hey, that's just falsetto. That's just like a light kind of head voice. What if I wanted to sing big, strong notes? Can I even use this in a song? You can. I got you. So from here, see if we're on the top note, we can find this in a squeak. Then we can open up to that. Behind the sound has already got that connection. Then you can lean into the sound. And if we apply this to the context of a song, all of a sudden we can punch into some pretty serious high notes. And because I've built it from this edge, this squeak, it doesn't actually feel that taxing to get to those high notes because all of a sudden my chords are together, they're stretching. The two things that actually get us to get to the high notes, they're working. The muscles that aren't involved in hitting high notes, the muscles around the neck, all these weird kind of movements or tension, all of a sudden they can start to dissipate. They can start to go away because they don't need to work anymore. And so hopefully this gives you perspective. Now, some of you might not be ready to hit those high notes. What I've shared today is simple and it's easy, but it takes time. It takes commitment, it takes discipline to get there. So some of you might be better off just going and doing the edge exercises. See if you can just find connection where you can, especially in a way that's not covered with tension, no weird kind of muscles coming in. And so you might have to start there, but take the time to do this, because I find that for a lot of singers, the biggest thing that they lack is sitting power. Team, that is a wrap. Hopefully you found value out of today's episode. And if you did, all I ask is to share this with a friend or family or colleague. This really, really means the world to me, and it can help our community expand even more. As usual, I want to leave you all with some motivation to get you all going. And the motivation from today actually comes from one of my students in our private community. And she said, hey, I'm about halfway through my lessons and I've hit a couple of goals already. One of those is feeling more confident singing. And takeaways from my lesson today are to let my body do its thing without moving my head and my body around, and to keep my jaw open more. Love the progress I am seeing. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this with you all is when you put the work, when you get the right guidance, when you commit to it, you will see results. A lot of you right now, you might not be seeing results. You might not be where you're at with your voice, but just know that it is possible. This is the reason why I do this podcast. This is the reason why I teach. This is the reason why I've been on this journey of singing for so long, because I think it is so possible for us to all learn how to sing and to become better. But it doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just happen over thin air. It happens when you're constantly working on your voice, seeking to get that 1% better, seeking the right guidance, working with a voice teacher, taking lessons, and seeking to become the best version of yourself. So team, once again, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Ivan. I'm your voice teacher from down under in Australia. And I look forward to seeing you next week or next Thursday, Friday for our next episode. Take care, and I'll see you all real soon.